Hello everyone, welcome to my channel about writing stuff. My name's Camille and today we're talking about how to revise for character. Now, as you can probably tell, I am filming in my studio because we're on quarantine and I wanted some privacy because even though it looks like I'm talking to you, I'm really just talking to my computer, which is super weird, and it's really uncomfortable when people like walk in or around when I'm talking to my computer. So okay, so revising for character. I'm on this topic today because I have been knee deep in revising an old manuscript. And it took me a very long time to come to terms with the fact that my character in this story was the reason why it was broken. Um, but since I finally accepted that and figured it out, I have a few tips on how to recognize if your character is the problem with your story, if your character is the reason why your story is, not as good as it could be. Um, some other fixes aside from fixing character, which I'll get into, and then how I fixed my character for my story. I can't unfortunately give you guys specifics on how to revise for your character because every character is different in every story, and I don't want to give you hard and fast rules on how to fix your book because chances are it might actually ruin your story. So just be aware of that. Now, this advice is going to be mainly for those of you who have written multiple books and have been through the revision process before. Of course, my videos are always for any writer at any stage in the writing process, but I feel like if I had received this type of advice when I was writing my first book, it would have just made my head spin and made me really frustrated. So just know that if you are a newer writer or if you're just starting out, the best thing you can do is to not worry about revising right now. Finish your book, finish multiple books. That way you can get an idea of how you work, how your story brain works, all that fun stuff. So, my book. Okay, so I wrote this story that I've talked about before on this channel, but I wrote this story which was a gender bent Tom Riddle origin story. So basically, teenage female sociopathic main character, and this can be a pitfall for me. One thing that I like to do, one thing that really um, influences my work, what I get really passionate about, is I'll read a story or watch a TV show or a movie, and there's something about a specific character or character dynamics that really just excites me, and I want to explore either that character or that character dynamic in a different setting and plot. So, usually, when this happens, it can turn out really well. Other times, it falls very flat or goes horribly wrong, which it did in this story. So, when I was writing the book, I tried to make it work. I tried to make this sociopathic teenage main character work in the story, um, which is a huge problem in YA, which I'll get into later. But basically, it took me I had to get to the querying process before I really understood that there was something wrong with this story. So, how to recognize your character as the issue to your story. A couple things. Um, if you're bored, if you're bored reading about your character, then your character is problem. That's an easy one. If you dislike your character or if your character's motives aren't clear, your character is what drives the story. Your character is what drives the plot. So if your character's motives aren't clear, that's another problem. But with this situation, the best advice you could get, it's feedback. Um, as the author of the story, we are connected to characters. So as you're writing the story, you're going to get tunnel vision. It's going to be really hard to assess the worth of this character or if this character is working in the story. So the best thing you can do is give it to betas, give it to your CPs, and get feedback. And if they are saying things like, this character's boring, or I'm not connecting to the character, or it's moving slowly, that could be a motive issue. So the first thing you need to do is recognize if your character is actually the problem, because it could be a number of other things as well. It could be the plot, it could be the setting, maybe the magic doesn't work, that kind of thing. So recognizing character is the issue is going to be your first step. Um, the next thing is, once you understand that your character is the issue, and this is kind of what I butted up against before really getting into revision, the reason why this sociopathic character, did not work in this story is because I was writing a young adult fantasy crossover with a mystery and a romantic subplot. Now, the issue with writing young adult is YA readers are looking for a specific type of character. For middle grade, the character journey is usually finding yourself, finding out who you are, what you like, this, that, and the other thing. For YA, it's the characters pretty much know who they are, but it's about them finding their place in the world. Whereas adult is a little bit more open. Adult is, the character knows who they are, know their place in the world, but maybe they're having like an identity crisis, or maybe it's more plot focused. A lot of thrillers, mysteries, those types of things are adult, because you have these characters who are people that are already established going through some other type of trial that doesn't have to do with their character persona or what have you. So since I was writing this sociopathic main character in a young adult book, it really didn't work because this character wasn't really looking for her place in the world. She came across very flat. There wasn't a lot of an emotional arc. And when I was thinking about revising this, I really wanted to keep this aspect of this, Tom Riddle, gender bent Tom Riddle character. But I was shoehorning this character into an age category where she didn't fit. So another fix that could have made this type of story work is I could have made it adult. I could have changed the age range of the book, aged her up. I could have made her a person who already knows who she is, where she is, da-da-da-da. I could have changed the genre. I could have focused less on the character arc, character story, and made it like a thriller or a horror novel. But that wasn't the story that I was trying to tell. The story I was trying to tell was a young adult, emotionally driven type of story. Those are the stories that I like to write. Those are the stories I really focus on. So I could have made the sociopathic character work, but not in the genre and not in the age category in which I was writing. So that's very important too. When you're trying to establish if your character is the problem in your story, you need to know your genre. You need to know which age category you're writing for, who your audience is. You need to know these things. That's why everyone always says, read widely, blah, blah, blah. It's very important. But again, that comes down to reading a lot and writing a lot. So yeah, just know what story you're telling. So like I said, I could have fixed this story by changing the genre or aging my character up, but that's not the story I wanted to tell. So I finally bit the bullet and realized, okay, I need to actually revise for this character. So this is getting into the nitty-gritty. Revising for character for me is the hardest part, because whether you're writing in third person or first person, your character is the lens through which your reader sees the story. So narrative, your character voice, who your character is shines through every word and every line. So it's butterfly effect, basically. If you change something about your character in the beginning of the story, that just percolates through and expands through the rest of the story, through everything, through how they see the world, any metaphors or analogies that they use, things that they reference, memories that are triggered, emotions that come to the surface, those types of things. So understand that if you're going to be revising for character, it's a lot of work and it sucks. Like I said, I can't give you guys specifics on how to revise for your specific characters in your specific books, but I can tell you the changes that I made to make this character work. So I made this character not a sociopath, unfortunately. Previously, her backstory and childhood and growing up and everything was a lot of neglect, which gave her that kind of antisocial, jaded, standoffish temperament, which wasn't working. So instead of having a neglected childhood, she had an abusive childhood. Sounds cliche, I know, but it happens. This was a way to get my character to work. So instead of being antisocial, she has walls up. So I changed her backstory. That's a big thing with when your character, people in general, their childhood and growing up does influence how they act, the type of person they are, which these things do morph and change as you get into adulthood. But for a young adult, a lot of young adults are not aware of these types of things. So changing backstory can really help for a young adult character or even a middle grade character. So that's the first thing that I did. And as this character in the previous drafts was a sociopath, she wasn't really emotionally attached to anything. She had something she wanted. She had something she was desperate for, but that situation and that person never really happened on the page. So she was desperate for something, but it was a lot of telling, no showing. So making your character desperate for something that they can interact with on the page, whether it is something as simple as making enough money to be able to afford to make a phone call, or it could be something like they never had friends before and they want to make friends. Maybe they're trying to get, a friend, they're trying to rescue someone, whatever. Just making your character desperate for something, but desperate for something that they can interact with on the page so that there's more showing, less telling. And the last thing that I changed is I gave my character an emotional arc. And that should go without saying. I'm terrible. But it's hard to give someone that far on the antisocial spectrum, someone who's like clear sociopath, it's hard to give them an emotional arc. So, my character started out one type of way, walls up, jaded, untrusting, whatever. And over the course of the story, things change and the character's different at the end. That is really the point of a story. If The Hobbit had started out with Bilbo not wanting to go on an adventure and then ending with Bilbo not wanting to go on an adventure, that would be a really shitty ending and a really shitty story. The events of a story changes your character, and that's what we read for. We want to see the character change, whether for the positive or the negative. So anyway, those are the changes that I made to my character. But like I said, it's a lot of work. So just be mindful of doing big picture stuff first. So, that's what I did at any rate. First draft, I went in big picture stuff. I changed the big chunks of backstory, memories, and then I'm through the second draft revision phase now, and I am revising for the thing that my character is desperate for, little things too. So this is more of a subtle change, and it's more line by line. So yeah, I think I'm going to continue on with this series, how to recognize if maybe your plot's not working, and then how to recognize whether your world elements and setting elements aren't working and how to revise for those, which are much easier to revise for than character, but still butterfly effect. So yeah, stay tuned for those. And I'm actually thinking about diving into my random ideas folder. I love sharing ideas, and I love that moment where like your light bulb goes off and you have this idea and you kind of run with it. And I have a whole folder of just random ideas that I'll probably never use. So I'm thinking about just like reading those and talking about them in a video, see how you guys like it. So if you'd like to see that, leave comments or tweet me at Camille A. Singer. I'll see you guys next time. But for now, you should be writing stuff.